Let's see. Oh, don't tell me my mic messed up yet again. Did it? I think there's a delay. Ah, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, this should be better. It's a weird thing that happens every once in a while. Although when and then let me check to make sure it's up everywhere else. Um, it's interesting. When I closed OBS to reset the microphone, it said that OBS had crashed. So that could explain it all. Okay. Welcome to Friday Gaming News on the BlueGamer Bluecast. I'm Adam Blue. Um, I'm trying to figure out what my intro is, but it's like I kind of want to give credibility to why you would watch me. But I like to say it's like what 30 plus years, 40? No, that I can't. I didn't play as an infant, so 30 plus years of gaming knowledge, industry knowledge. Um, yeah, it's Black Friday. Thanksgiving was yesterday. And a lot of times during Thanksgiving, that's the time to like play a bunch of different cool video games. Um, the most recent memories have been things like Call of Duties and Assassin's Creed. But I remember, you know, going far back to like Sonic. I remember Sonics were famous for releasing during this time of year. Um, hey, no. So anyway, so this year, to talk about what I've been playing for this Thanksgiving break, what did I play? Well, um, so I actually in the Castlevania Advanced Collection, I beat Dracula X, the SNES version. I used to own that cartridge, and I sold off my physical collection. And that's just one thing it brings me back to, and the stuff I come across over again and again with these retro gaming YouTubers that I feel like that's uh, is it's like my legacy that I didn't continue with, and these younger people are doing it. And I've noticed it's very common. They'll have the library and collection of games. So a lot of times they never played some of these games. But that was the same thing with me. There were so many games that I had and I collected and I never played them. So being able to like purge myself of all that physical stuff and then through either re-releases or emulation, able to go back to them. One of those being Dracula X. I remember I played it on the Super Nintendo. It was so hard, I just never really went back to it. And I played it the past few days. It took me 4 hours with save scumming. I mean, luckily it has, it's a re-release, but they update it with UI options where like you can press. I'm actually, because it was on the Super Nintendo, I'm using this controller. You press the ZL and it opens a menu where I can then save. So the game is so hard. I got to say, this is going to be one of the hardest games I have played, Dracula X. And here's some conclusion I came to. Sometimes people like to mention like, oh, a 2D Souls-like. But no. That already existed before a Souls-like. That was Castlevania. And the Souls games are 3D Castlevanias. That's literally what it is. Like when I realized there's this certain momentum to the mechanics that both Souls and Castlevanias have that I enjoy, and that is as you're exploring and trying to survive, you're just trying to get to the next point, whatever that is. And then you're wanting to save because your life can deplete pretty quickly. You could die and have to start over. And like in a Souls game, when you die, your souls are left behind, so you can go back and get it. But in Castlevania, when you die, anything you've achieved up to your death is gone completely, and then you have to start over. So just like trying to find the bonfire, you're trying to find the save room in Castlevanias. And then when you get to the bosses, the same thing. It's like usually there's a save room, and then this door has a boss. And then you go in there, and then the boss is hard. It's really about memorizing their swings, their attacks, whatever they do. Try to avoid it, maybe stock up on some potions so you can heal yourself to prepare for it. And so that's really why I like the Castlevania games and really like the Souls games. They have this sort of, yeah, this momentum, this loop of treading carefully until you can save, and then playing bosses sometimes multiple times in order to memorize their patterns and kill them. The thing is, the Dracula X game is hard. It doesn't have save points. It's pretty much, and this one isn't a Metroidvania, even though it started introducing some of that stuff, and that actually could have been in other previous Castlevanias too. So what's really hard about Dracula X is, you know, in Castlevania, you can get the one item you hold on to, and then you use the hearts that are really magic. It's not health. That's to, you know, use your magic throwables, knives, a cross, whatever. In Rondo of Blood, which is the original version of Dracula X. Dracula X is the Super Nintendo port. It wasn't CD, so they had to kind of regress the graphics. There's an item you can pick up that's a key. Now, you can't use the key as a weapon, but it allows you to open locked doors, which there's not many. The thing is, if you die or pick up another item, you lose the key completely. So you have to try to play through the game holding the key so you can unlock the doors. And there's probably a place where you don't have to hold the key anymore. And I just don't know that yet. So, okay, so what's interesting is with this advanced collection, when you go to save your game in Dracula X, there's 10 save slots each game has. Just 10. There's no reason for it. It's just, you know, they just went with 10. So what would happen is I'd have the key, but then I'd see a door I can open, but I could continue my path. I'm like, wow, which way do I want to go? Because there are different instances where the game splits off, and then it's different versions of the levels. So what I did in Dracula X is I saved my games where other branched paths are it could go. Now, without modern conveniences like save scumming, I don't know how people did it back in the day on the Super Nintendo, being able to play through that game. I guess, to be fair, it says I've only played for 4 hours. That's really not that much, you know. If you think about it, even though it would be super repetitive, it could take up to 15 to 20 hours maybe to properly play that game, to not lose your lives. But the thing is, there are some, even with the save scumming, it was so hard. There's areas that I had to redo probably 30 times because Castlevanias are known to be hard, but that one, I want to look back and read people's thoughts on the game back when it came out. I wonder if collectively maybe we've changed how we can play games. You know what I mean? As they've become, there's been more guardrails put up in games as we moved into the future, and maybe that made it now where a game like the Castlevania, Dracula X and Super Nintendo would be impossible today without like the save options. So, you know, and this actually I brought this up before because I was talking about how even with games nowadays, like with Mario and stuff, I'm seeing it where it's like younger people that are playing games, and I feel like it's just like the collective evolved consciousness. Now, this can kind of get a little sci-fi fantasy, but the idea that a consciousness is evolving over generations. So, you know, just as people are starting to play games today, they just need to be a little more wild and crazy and have a lot going on, or it's not going to keep people's attention. But that could be just introduced to technology at a very early age that then requires attention at all times. I have kids, so I've seen this myself. You know, it's just interesting. It's really interesting. Games evolved. I think Dracula X, I think, was the last of that kind. And then we got Symphony of the Night, which had, while it's still hard, instead of the save scumming, you're basically just going back to the save room, going back to the bonfire. You know, that works a little different than Dracula X, where there was no saving, just you would die and have to start over again. It's wild. And so I used the key to save Maria, and then there was she said there's another key, and I think to save her mom, but I forget. But what's interesting is, and I just remembered this, there was a PSP version that was a not even a remaster. What do you call it when you redo it? Just a remake, a complete remake of the original Rondo of Blood. So technically, there's 3 versions. I just beat Dracula X. I need to go and beat Rondo of Blood. I've actually been playing on PS5. There's a Rondo of Blood Symphony of the Night 2-pack, and then I did beat the PSP version, but I'll probably emulate that, play through it again. Those are just good games. Now, just to go back to this Souls Castlevania thing, I think Konami should commission From Software to make a Castlevania, just in the vein of Dark Souls. Just the difference. Think of Elden Ring, but instead of just this big land, there would be a surrounding land, but then in the middle is maybe the castle, and the whole exploration is around the castle. This is reminding me a lot of the N64 games, which were actually not bad, but going around in N64 Castlevanias, going around, going in the castle, exploring it. Instead of bonfires, it's the save rooms. I even went back to the 3D one on PS2. There's 2 of them. Lament of Innocence, and it's just okay. They almost did like too much of a literal translation of 2D to 3D without realizing, okay, we're in a 3D space. How can we make this feel like a good game? Not that it's a bad game. I'd have to play through that more someday to see if it hooks me. But anyway, yeah, make it where you're the thing that would set it apart from being just another Souls-like. One, you could say, well, these mechanics were introduced in Castlevania anyway, so it's Castlevania. But, I think one thing could be like the music, the atmosphere, the characters. So whereas Souls games are pretty reserved in terms of the story and character development, because a lot of it is done through reading descriptions on items or what someone says on the side. It could be where there's more characters, where there's a lot more dialogue, just like we see in the anime and in the older games too. I think if you inject that kind of characterization of what Castlevania is within a Dark Souls or Elden Ring world, you're going to get a badass modern 3D Castlevania, especially if the main idea of the game is that Dracula's castle, explore it like you would explore the Elden Ring worlds. You have this castle that's crazy, and because of the nature of Dracula's castle, while it might look big on the outside, you could go inside and be somewhere that is bigger than the castle, because it works kind of like a TARDIS, right? Dracula's castle. Yeah, just think of the last boss being Dracula, both his human looking form and then like his demon form and stuff like that. I think the one thing that I would do, and this is something that came to me with Indiana Jones, it's because Castlevania and Indiana Jones, they both have a whip. But when they were talking about making a 3D Indiana Jones game, I was like, you know what? The mechanics and the structure of the Sniper Elite games would work perfect for an Indiana Jones game, because a lot of it's sneaking around trying not to get into combat, stealing artifacts and things like that. But the mechanic that they should add in, my thought is Indy has a whip that's like his ranged melee attack, but throughout the world there would be areas that are designated to use a whip, so you can like kind of grapple, swing, pull yourself up. Make that the platforming, not the traditional Horizon Uncharted platforming, because what's cool about the sniper games is they don't really have much platforming. But I think if you were going to make it an Indiana Jones game, you would add the layer of the whip for traversal, and even for playing Spider-Man, it reminds me. We'll talk about Spider-Man 2 here in a second, but where like you can use the whip to like pull the gun out of people's hands. So if they were to make the Castlevania game from Software to make a Castlevania game like Dark Souls, I would say instead of making it where there's maybe you can make it where there's a bunch of weapons, but just have it where your whip is kind of like your primary default that you can constantly level up. But that is for traversal. Traverse. Now I added an H. Traversal. Oh my god. But anyway, where you can like whip, and it reminds me of like powering it up. So power up your whip that allow to have a chain, so then you can hang on to certain things to pull yourself up. So yeah, think of Elden Ring with badass Castlevania music and a grappling hook, and that would be a 3D Castlevania. So I guess this just came from the idea of playing Castlevania games. I realize all Souls games are 3D Castlevania games. So if you want to play a 2D Castlevania or a 2D Souls-like, Castlevanias, man. But maybe they're too hard. Maybe they're just too hard. You know, a lot of these more modern games that are directly saying, "Oh, we're Souls-likes," they still play like a Castlevania, just a little easier because, like I said, with the checkpoints, you can kind of go back to the save point. So, hey, Chad. Hey, Ian. Good to see you guys. Hope you're having a good Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Other things I've been playing: Remnant 2, which I'm starting to get into the groove of, and I actually think it is really good, even though on the it's like Call of Duty. It does everything it needs to do for what it's doing, and it does it really well, and it's really tight. Call of Duty does that with first-person shooters and multiplayer. Remnant does that with a third-person looter shooter. I think they're able to take Destiny. Again, Remnant is nothing like a Souls game. It's pretty much Warframe and Destiny put together. Warframe because it's third-person, but Remnant 2 has some very interesting design choices compared to the first one, where there's a lot more to it, where it almost doesn't have an identity. It's more like, here's some stuff that looks like Warframe. Here's some stuff that looks like Destiny. And actually, I don't mind because it feels good to play, and the exploration is actually pretty fun. And what I've learned is when you're actually starting a world, it's all randomly generated. I did not know that. There's like different biomes, and so the first biome you start in is going to be random, and it's going to be randomized. So I think that's really interesting that this game does it. Again, the combat is tight. It's really good. It reminds me of the Division 2. Division 2, I think, has impeccable gameplay. It is just on point, perfect, but it kind of lacks in like what you do with that gameplay. And I think there's a little bit of that to Remnant 2. The difference with Remnant 2 is I think there is more of an exploration element that Division doesn't have. And with Remnant 2, what am I trying to get at? Kind of the structure of like a mission between checkpoints is really fast paced, but there's a lot to do. So Remnant 2 is a good one. I think it's one of those that sneak under people's radars because I can see where it's not amazing, but it's really good. It's a hard one. And then yeah, Call of Duty. I haven't played too much this week actually. It was mainly Remnant 2 and Castlevania that I was mainly playing this week. Not much Call of Duty, but I mean, I've been having fun with that. You know, we're going to get into it in just a little bit about this Microsoft tax and why Call of Duty could have been rated as low as it has this new one, even though most people that are into the Call of Duty games are saying this is the best the multiplayer has been. Like, you know, vaulting, slide canceling is a little quicker. The time to kill is a little longer. So, and that's why then the guns from Modern Warfare 2 are a little different. At first I thought they made them weaker, but it's not that they made them weaker. It's just now I'm getting used to, oh, it's a higher time to kill. But it doesn't apply to everything because, for instance, the super shotgun still works like the super shotgun in Modern Warfare 3. I love it. It's one of my favorite weapons. It makes the game play like Doom, really. Something I like about that. Oh, Chad, Blasphemous is a 2D FromSoft game, but I agree Castlevania are like FromSoft. Yeah, it's interesting. It is so interesting, especially when after the Armored Core games, people were like, well, FromSoft should make a Gundam game. And it's like, actually, they did. They did make a Gundam game, and it's not bad, but it wasn't good because at the end of the day, Armored Core is cool, but it's not amazing. I would say Remnant 2, personally, I like more than Armored Core 6, the new one. Even though, thematically, Armored Core 6 is more my thing. It's very interesting. Okay, 9 Years of Shadows. I talked about that last. I didn't play it anymore, even though that could be a quick game to beat. And I don't know, yeah, that's it for PC. On Switch, I got myself the OLED. I decided I just want to get the OLED after using the ROG Ally with that VRR 120 hertz screen. Games look fantastic. And then the PlayStation Portal came out, and I wanted to get one, but the reviews were not that great. And I was seeing people playing it live and streaming, and you could see like where it's not smooth. Yet when I'm using on my ROG Ally Chiaki, I did a video of that on my Gundam Explained channel. Maybe I'll remember to link that below. The PlayStation streaming on the ROG Ally using Chiaki is perfect. Is it perfect? Like, so far, I would assume there would be some artifacting and buffering, but for me, it's been working excellent. It's really awesome. So I guess what I'm getting at is I've really learned to love having the handheld so I can pick up, play something real quick. And then so I got the Skull and Co. Grip. So what it is, it's just like a a plasticky, flexible plastic kind of cover on it, but it also has these handles that you can like slide off. It came with 3 different types. This one is amazing. It is better feeling than the ROG Ally. I hope. So what I like about grips is having my middle finger have a really solid hold on something, because then it makes it easy for me to like do whatever I need as quickly as possible. I've realized with like the ROG Ally, like I'm straining trying to, because I don't have a place for my middle finger to go. My whole hand is then trying to. So yeah, I hope they come up with something with the ROG Ally. I do have the JSOX silicone sleeves they made, and they're pretty good, but I could probably use something better. Anyway, the main reason with this is I wanted to help, because my wife and I beat Mario, but there's still some, there's a bunch of hidden levels. The only one we've 100% completely is the first world, because even the first world, I think is like level 8 maybe, there's a hidden exit, which I love. It reminds me of Super Mario World stuff. And so I got that finally, because sometimes you have to have that green check mark to know that you've actually completed everything. So I'm able to then, once you first initialize, because I have 2 switches now, but once you first initialize them both to do the cloud saving, it's seamless, and I love it. And it's almost like, yeah, once you get your new switch and you sign in and you enable cloud saves, then you have to go to your other switch, enable it there too, and then all your games, I love it. It's like with Steam on my ROG Ally and my desktop. But the game I've been playing on Switch, actually, I found out about, it's on the PC or mobile. You could play it in a browser. It's either a browser or on Switch, and it's Suika game, Suika game. It's like a Tetris, so it's not like anything crazy, but it is so addicting. I've actually played a lot of that this week. It's a fun game. It's a fun game. Would that be in the top 5? The only reason I probably wouldn't put it in the top 5 game of the year is because, assuming it came out this year, actually I didn't check. It's just because it's such a basic game. I think it's more of a distraction than it really is a interesting, mechanically sound game. I hope that doesn't make it sound like I'm talking bad about it, because it's a lot of fun, but not what I'm looking for right now. So let's get to Spider-Man 2. So for Thanksgiving week, my game for this year was going to be Spider-Man 2, and I played a bunch of it. And, I liked Spider-Man. I liked Miles a lot more. And my main complaint with the original PS4/5 Spider-Man and Miles is there's a lot of the walking and talking. There's a lot of those gameplay segments where you just have to kind of sneak around and wait. And the reason I play it is because of the combat mechanics. I really want to jump into and manipulate and use these combat mechanics. I love how it works, and you can use different things and do this, do that. Oh, I'm gonna switch to this, switch to that. And with this one, what I gotta say is graphics or production value is like the greatest gaming production value ever. That's what they've got going for this. And sometimes that alone is enjoyable enough to overlook things. Like, for me, walking and talking. There's a lot of that in the Spider-Man 2 game, especially at the beginning. And it could be my age or something, I don't know, but a lot of times it's very tropey, what they're saying, what they're talking about. It's not like it's anything profound, which I guess it doesn't need to be. I just feel like since I'm wanting to play a game, I just want to jump and have my mind kind of interacting with all the different mechanics at any given time. But no, there's sometimes I'm going an hour or so where it's like dialogue, or I'm just in a guided sequence where I just have to L2, R2, L1, R1, L1 square, just through a series of events. So but here's the thing. I like going back to it and then playing it. It's just, it quickly it quickly loses my attention because there's so many times it breaks away from the gameplay. On top of that, maybe you guys have heard of all the bugs that the Spider-Man 2 game has had, the white cube, some other things. One I kept hearing was like sometimes missions would bug and then there'd be nothing else to do and you'd just be wandering around like, okay. And that had happened to me twice in one day during my whole play session where I was already in a sequence that, and you guys might remember this, it's like they go back and then you're like Peter Parker when he's younger. Again, it's more narrative stuff, but then they try to add gameplay where you're sneaking around, stealthing. It's like, I don't care to do that, to be honest. And then I got to a point where I'm supposed to like dangle down, grab the USB drive from the security guard, and the game wouldn't let me do it. And I'm like, man, I am missing something obvious, am I? So I looked online, like, what am I supposed to do here? They're like, yeah, just go to the middle and then hang down. But every time I would go to the middle chandelier, it would knock me over to like, I think it's probably not chandelier. It would knock me over to the other basketball hoops. I'm like, okay, something's going on. So then I pressed start, went to restart checkpoint. It immediately initiated the sequence I needed to do what I needed. And I was like, oh, so that bug I heard about multiple times actually happened to me too. That's pretty crazy. Usually when I hear that, it makes me think, okay, so that's a very consistent thing, which bugs happen. But then it happened again. This time, I was finally in a really cool sequence that happens not too long after that, where it was constant action. I was like, okay, this is my jam. This is what I want to play Spider-Man for. And then I killed the rest of these guys, and then I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, okay, what next? So then I start shooting some random things that are really just background things. I'm like, okay, that's not doing anything. And then I see Miles standing there, and I'm like, Miles? What? And nothing. And I'm like, well, let me just restart checkpoint. Did that. It got me right into my next sequence. So that tells me twice the game has bugged out. I'm hoping it doesn't happen too often, and luckily it's been to where I've been able to just get back into it by restarting the checkpoint, but I wasted my time trying to figure out why I wouldn't move on. And I hope it doesn't happen in a sequence that takes a long time to get through or I find boring, so I don't know, I seem negative, but it's because this is an example of a game that is made to be very, it's a game that's made to be very wide range, like for anybody, anyone could play this. And because of that, there's things I have to deal with. But I think I'm a little more upset because I don't like how they changed the combat, although I'm willing to keep trying. Because what they do is now, as you get items, it's like L1 and R1 are the buttons you press to then initiate certain actions with the face buttons, right? So I guess that's like 8 you have, but as you unlock things, you then have to swap them out. And I guess, I don't know, I kind of don't like that because I liked in the other Spider-Man game where it's more of I can kind of choose what I wanted to upgrade to make full use of. And I guess I'm saying that because then as I would play sometimes I wouldn't have anything but something, I don't use this much, I'll just use it. I'm like, oh, that was a good idea. This actually helped me out in this scenario. I'm going to now incorporate this into my combo of gadgets. I think the way they did this, they kind of simplified the system, especially how you hold down to press when you're going to do it. It's either L1 or R1. I feel like it made it too arbitrary and it's not built into the comboing control. I don't know. Maybe I'm making stuff up. I do that sometimes. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about how they've changed the combat. But it could change as I get through it. It could be that I'm setting up a sequence and I'm setting up, okay, these are the attacks, the powers I'm going to use, whatever. So, yeah, so I'll probably be given that game maybe like an hour a day or something, depending on what the sequences are. I will say some aspects that I really liked. And sometimes games do this really well, and sometimes they don't. So there's that time. Hey, Talos Mobius, good to see you. Hope you have been having a good week. But like in Miles Morales, I loved it started with the original Spider-Man PS4. There's a time where you can walk around in Otto's lab. You can walk around, Otto Octavius. You can walk around like Aunt May's Helping Hand Center, whatever it's called. In Miles Morales, they had his apartment. They lived with his mom. And I like that, especially when they decorate it for Christmas. Now, this goes to where I don't care usually about in games, and that's like the narrative experience where you're in Miles' home just for the sake of character building, world building, which I don't care about in games too much, but I liked it. I was able to connect with it a whole lot. And they did it again in this one where you go to Peter Parker's room, and I love looking around at the bedrooms because I think just also an American middle class male, growing up in North Texas, it's like the rooms are very similar. The stuff that would be in there, even the sequence when they went to the high school, it reminded me of how much I liked high school and like it was fun. And I was like, those are some fun times because there was so many responsibilities I didn't have to worry about. So there was less pressure just overall in my life. So I gotta say, I appreciate that. I think it would be cool somehow in the future to make some sort of game that, some sort of open world game, but you can really do a lot to detail the environment you're in to allow it to cause you to feel things. Like it's like right now in games like Minecraft, Fortnite, you can build things to make them look and function the way you want. But what about creating and building something that allows you to feel a certain way? And I think probably Dreams on PlayStation allowed for that, but I didn't really play that. But then again, it has to be introduced in a game that I would then be down to play. This is a lot of just weird gaming brainstorming going on that I do. And then to go down this tangent real quick, it's like I've been thinking about a van life game. I think it would be pretty cool if you get to build and decorate your own van, and then in the game you can travel wherever you want, set up camp, and then go and do it again. And I think it would be cool as you're in your van, you have like an in-game camera that you can set up to live stream, and then in the mic you're talking, and you can like live stream to people in this van life game, and then other people in the van life game could be in their van watching a stream of someone else's and get ideas of how to. I think there's something to that, and that's interesting to me because that's not a typical kind of mechanics-driven game that I would play. That's more of a self-driven narrative game. I don't play too many of those. And I tried to. Like, I didn't even play RoboCop this week. Even though I like it, it is more of a narrative game. So, I just didn't have... I just need something for my mind and my hands to go crazy on. Okay. Was there anything else that I played? And I don't think so. I downloaded Hi-Fi Rush again. I did before, didn't like it. I wanted to kind of give it another shot. And I think that's really about it. So we're going to jump into some gaming news. Here's the games I played. Actually, let me press this okay, because sometimes it will show like maybe something I installed on my other machine, and then it's like, oh, I could be playing that. But okay, some gaming news. Some gaming now is this Xbox tax. I just heard about this today, although I have thought about this. I just never assumed it was a real thing that existed and people were talking about. So, the Xbox tax refers to the perception that the Game Awards show discriminates against Xbox titles, as evidenced by the lack of Game of the Year nominations for Xbox games in recent years. But my first thought when I look at that is, okay, they're using this Xbox tax specifically, I guess, in terms of the Game Awards show. When I would say it is kind of odd that there's not at least one big Xbox call out in terms of, I think there would be an exchange of money. Maybe that tells us there's not an exchange of money for things like that. I don't know. But I do think that Xbox doesn't have anything to be the Game of the Year. I mean, even Starfield, I played a bit of that, and it's all right. I didn't feel like it was really worth spending more of my time with it. It just in context of all the other games I like to play. But it not being part of the Games Awards, like, that makes sense to me. Oh, Mitch, good to see you. You just make yourself a hot chick in boots in boot shorts. Oh, to get more views. Actually, I do that in games anyway. Even in Remnant 2, I am a hot chick. Yeah, what other games do that? It's funny. When I play a game, I like model it like my wife because I think she's a hot chick. So I usually model if I pick a female and give it dark hair and all that. Um, but okay. But Mitch, good to see you. You were over at Thanksgiving last night. That was awesome. Good to see you there. So, so yeah, I don't think Xbox lately. I feel like Xbox is like the MCU with the first Iron Man. It was cool to see the Iron Man movie, but I wasn't into Iron Man, and I wasn't like, oh my god, MCU. And then those movies that kind of followed Hulk and stuff, they were like cool, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this is amazing. They were setting things up for later on. Like they were setting things up for um, the Avengers movies, where it started getting super epic, right? I think Xbox has been doing that for the past few years, and I think they not many companies do this, but I think they were thinking long term. I think there's a lot of thinking. I think they're able to think long term because they have their other divisions. They have the Office, they have Azure. So with Xbox and with someone like Phil Spencer, who always seems like an honest and like someone that really loves games, it's like he's like, okay, this is what we got to do. In a perfect world, you'd be able to play any game anywhere. So they went hard on that backwards compatibility. I applaud them. They didn't even have to. I only had my Xbox sitting around to play the Revenge of the Sith, and was it just Revenge of the Sith? I think there's another one. And then they made those discs playable on Series X. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Even though if really I wanted to, I could emulate it. I just like that that's their plan, because if they're thinking that and they're making an effort for the previous games, you would think that all future games would do that. And they're almost there with that, like the Xbox Anywhere. So like when Starfield first came out, I was playing on my PC first, and then I tried it on my big screen in the living room on the Xbox. And I like that I could go back and forth. It's just that not any game that releases on Xbox needs to be play anywhere, but that is a big thing that they're doing. At the same time, it's the cloud streaming, where the idea is like you can have Game Pass, a library of games that you can stream anywhere, just like if you have Netflix on your phone or Netflix on your TV. The idea is let's have Xbox Game Pass on your phone, on your TV. So all this stuff is like, wow, there's so many ways you can play video games. And I was about to say Xbox games, but it's like, it's just in general video games. So that's why this whole thing of buying Activision's awesome, because they've already set the foundation to make their exclusive games highly playable, very low barrier of entry. So this is, I feel like in the next year or two will be their Avengers moment, maybe even 3, where they start coming out with games that are badass. But I think just if they are conscious about their support with the new acquisitions they've got from the Activision Blizzard deal, that they could make games that have already been in development that are supposed to come out next year just that much cooler by being on Game Pass, or just general support with DLC, playability with Play Anywhere. I mean, and that's the thing, like this year. So I bought Modern Warfare 3 or Modern Warfare 2 last year on PC. My youngest wanted to play it, but it's like I'm not right now. We can't just buy 2 games, so you can just use my account, or on the Xbox, like the play share. But if we wanted to play at the same time, while I was on a PC, I was like, well, we would have to buy it on Xbox. So I waited till later when it was cheap. Modern Warfare 3 comes out, and I can't buy 2 copies. That's just a little much right now. Plus, he's playing a lot of other games. But I guess what I'm getting at is family play anywhere, all those types of games that Microsoft has that supporting foundation for, where play anywhere and all that. It would address a lot of these little issues. So yeah, I got to say I appreciate Microsoft and what they're doing, and I think in the next few years we'll start seeing their games at the Game Awards. I just hope that they are what they need to do is do a Spider-Man, and they need to get a cool character that they're making a game for, a big budget, high production value game. That's what they need to do. They need to, even if it's a Spider-Man where it's not fully my type of game, they need to do that high production value game that Sony's been doing. Although I can get into, now we see where Sony's at with dropping a lot of their veteran developers knowing that, well, we can't really go all in at live service. It's not really working. I'm really curious what they're doing. Both Sony and Xbox kind of have a weird future ahead of their games. This could leave room for these smaller developers, publishers to kind of rise up. Okay, there's a new gap now in the publishers. A lot of these big publishers that put a lot of money into games that had to kind of scale back, that's going to be a big hit. Maybe these smaller studios are going to start getting higher visibility. So that could mean the next few years could be really cool. And then once the next few years are over, I think that's when we're going to start seeing Xbox come out with some badass games. I don't know what Sony's going to do, to be honest, because I really thought their strategy was going to be, we'll continue our story-driven narrative games, but then we're going to have live service. But they're like, no, live service. And then they're like, yeah, the story narrative games aren't the way to go. Like, you know, and then how much of this, too, is the economy? You know, and that's why I think Nintendo's been able to be so successful, because they don't do things based on the economy. They do things based on that they can figure out. And when shit hits the fan, the CEOs, the executives take the pay cut. So I think that's the other layer to it. Anyway, so let me get back to this Xbox text, because I know I'm just like rambling on. I do think, and that's just because I follow game journalism for so long. I know a lot of game journalists personally. I've interacted with a whole lot professionally, even the kind of the people in between, where it's like the I guess the press, if you will, where they kind of connect developers or publishers with influencers. Even though I'm not like a big gaming influencer, I've just been doing this for a while, and I have a lot of friends in the scene. And so, and I guess I wasn't too sure what my point was going to be, because I kind of rambled on there for a while. But I guess it's more of, I do know from some games journalists, when they do reviews and stuff, there's a bias sometimes, and sometimes that's okay, because a review sometimes is a personal opinion. I wonder how much a review is like someone's reviewing this objectively, someone's reviewing this subjectively, but that doesn't really happen. So I'm used to then, when I'm seeing a game reviewer review a game, and I can see if there's that bias, like, oh, I know how he's going to review this. I know how she's going to review that. The Modern Warfare 3 thing was odd for me, because and I talked about this before, I started seeing all these low reviews, but then there's rumblings, and I don't go out seeking this information. I found this video, if you search Destin, Destin, that talked about it a little bit, and then I went to go see, is this like really a thing? And it is, where people just don't like Microsoft. There's people that are like that, like with Apple, they don't like Apple. But now that Microsoft has Activision, Call of Duty, World, it's like there's this huge community of online, it's a fan base, an online fan base, tons of people that have merged, and the noise is only going to get louder, right? And I think from that, what's going to rise to the top are kind of the more subtle feelings going on, and I think we are seeing that Microsoft bias that exists because of its monopolistic nature, historically, even though I tend to think they're pretty good, but they're also involved in the things that other corporations that people complain about are involved in. They deal with layoffs too. They deal with the same corporate practices that cause issues. I try not to let that be a deciding factor in a lot of things, but I am seeing with certain reviewers where there is that bias against anything that's now associated with Microsoft. So that could be Call of Duty, for instance. And that might make then the Xbox fans even more vocal. And that could be then why we're seeing what looks like. But again, I said this in my last podcast. I'm surprised the low scores Call of Duty is getting, because it's as good as they are. I've played better campaigns, but I've also played a lot worse campaigns. And the fact that I had these free missions, that was a cool concept. That's something you can just kind of revisit for fun and try to like do something differently. But anyway, to kind of go back to what this is getting at is, yes, Xbox has a weak gaming lineup. We're not going to see their stuff at the Game Awards. Hopefully they can fix that soon. They probably will. They've been building a foundation. They're going to have their Avengers moment. still taking his time. I feel like he's doing it right. The Halo thing, the Halo 5 thing has Halo 5. No, Halo Infinite thing pissed me off. That there was something there and they dropped the ball. Tails Moves, the reason COD got low scores was from the campaign because the last game had a new fan base that enjoyed the story and people DLC not like, and people did not like the new campaign. Well, yeah, but there's also reviews, and I've been seeing that too, but there's also reviews where it's saying like this is the worst Call of Duty multiplayer has been. I think I was talking about earlier in the show because of the slide canceling, the quicker attack, the longer time to kill. But people are saying this is the best Call of Duty has been. So it's like, it's weird for it to be divisive. The last time that was ever an issue was when they decided they weren't going to have any more dedicated servers when it was on PC. You know what? It's historically a PC thing, and then it became a console thing, and that was its main thing, and then PC players felt left out for a while. And then I think we're in this new generation where it's kind of reversed. People are more console focused. And so I think now maybe Call of Duty is just enough in the zeitgeist that there's enough younger people to see this as a game, just another game, and not like, oh, this is what Call of Duty is. You know, like not having as much experience with the older Call of Duties. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of Call of Duty, and this will be quick because I feel like I talked about a lot of Call of Duty. This sounds awesome, in a way. The next Call of Duty Black Ops would be set in the Gulf War, so that's pretty cool. I was young at that time, younger than 10, when the Gulf War first occurred, because I was like, 90 after the Cold War is the Gulf War, so they can continue war. Starting to put that together, but anyway. Yeah, so during that time, remember Micro Machines came out with like this Gulf War set, and I loved that. And then when Command & Conquer came out, it's kind of based on military vehicles during that time. So there's this whole that aesthetic I really like. Even though sometimes my first thought is, okay, we're making a video game based on this crap that happened. But you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about that for now on because people are making this not to take advantage of something. It's because they see that charm. They feel that charm. It's something interesting. All right. I'm not going to talk about this too long. The video game company layoffs are creating an industry crisis. People are just an expense. They don't necessarily care about the human impact. Well, the truth is, this is not a video game industry thing. This is a worldwide industry thing that's going on right now. And it really is because, and it's the same thing like that happened with COVID. Corporations are working at a level that one little hiccup and bam, the cards fall. The same thing happened here because COVID, it was like going into the pandemic, people just kind of switched, things kind of shifted. Companies were able to make use of that, and then they went back to their same practices, doubling down, taking out a whole lot, banking on a future thing that may not happen. And because industries are still recovering from COVID, then we get those interest rates on loans super high, so then these companies can't afford to do projects because they'll be like, oh, we want to get this business, so let's go get a whole bunch of money so we can hire people and say, yeah, we can do your business. That's kind of what they do. So when businesses weren't looking for business and then interest rates were getting high on loans, it was kind of like, okay, well, all of these companies, all different industries had to start laying off people. The company I work for went through that. 3 layoffs this year. I'm super thankful. I guess that's my main thinking about it. My main Thanksgiving thankfulness thing here is that I didn't get laid off. But anyway, I just wanted to bring this up because a lot of times things are looked at a very narrow scope with the video game industry, and with that narrow view, sometimes you don't really understand how the world is actually functioning. I think this was apparent too with the Me Too movement. That kind of started in the video game sphere, and then it leaked out to Hollywood and all that through social media, because video gamers are usually on top of technology first, especially during the mid-2000s, and so they were already getting on Twitter. and then people were then able to understand that they can voice themselves and get support. So the Me Too movement was really, yeah, the whole ethics and games journalism thing. Anyway, okay. Am I getting near the end here? I think I am. I'm so tired of crossover skins cluttering up video games. So I just want to talk about skins in games real quick. That's crazy that Master Chief is in Rainbow Six Siege. Here's my thought. If something is like an ongoing live service multiplayer that's not narratively focused, I think it's okay to do crossovers. I mean, okay, so I'm playing this Spider-Man 2 game, right? It's a single-player campaign I'm playing. Like, if there was some random crossover where, like, I don't even know where to go with this. I'm going to say Harry Potter. Harry Potter comes into the universe of Spider-Man 2, and you can, like, pay for a pass to get him, and you get his wand, or no, it's a broomstick he flies. But I think that's for a game, and he doesn't always have it, although shouldn't they just always have brooms? But anyway. And then you can have Harry Potter in your Spider-Man game. Like, that doesn't make sense. But if I'm just playing Rainbow Six where I'm just some tactical military people just shooting each other, yeah, sure, you can throw Master Chief. Call of Duty, I feel the same way. Call of Duty is just generic military person. I might as well be Ash or Spawn because I'm playing the game for the Call of Duty shooting and mechanics. I'm not playing it for any sort of world I'm in. That's why I think what Fortnite's doing is fine. Payday 2, that's the dude from, Al Pacino. I think so. I think that's supposed to be him from that movie. Why am I blanking? That makes sense for something like Payday 2. Oh, Talos, some more insight. With AC, there are people that consider AC4 the best and people that hate it. Dying Light 2 did crossover right, even if it's narrative-driven. Oh, you'll have to give me more detail. Actually, let me look that up. Because, Dying Light 2, I played like a second of. I didn't actually play. For Honor? What? This is actually recent. So, guys, this is breaking news. Thanks, Talos. Wait, so does that mean in Dying Light 2, they're adding characters with more like melee mechanics? Or is it in For Honor, you can fight zombies? Because either one of those sounds like a great idea. Um, that would actually get me to play it. Weapons in the. Okay, so that's actually pretty cool. I can see myself getting back to that. Dying Light 2 is kind of boring to me. I don't know. Um, okay, and so here's my thought. I'm hoping in the future, as games come out, that their multiplayer world is not narrative driven or a focus of what you're doing. They should have whatever crossovers. Actually, Talos and I have been talking about this recently. So over on Gundam Explained, he's a supporter and staff member of Gundam Explained. In GBO2, Gundam Battle Operation 2, it takes place during Universal Century, but it's almost this sort of like fictional aspect where all the mobile suits have like they're like mass produced pretty much so that people can join the private military union, take it out to help combat. It's a neat way to make it work, right? They've recently decided to add other universes, potentially. They're still gauging interest. So what I mean is, if you've heard of Gundam Wing, that's separate from Universal Century Gundam, right? So the idea is they'll add some wingsuits in to Universal Century Gundam, and I'm like, well, you know what? If done right, I don't mind by now, because really, there's not this like narrative thing that I'm so focused on, but also the way the game works, you can easily set up some matches in Gundam Battle Operation 2 that mimic any sort of battle or fight. Man, I could talk about that forever. We'll have to talk more about that, Talos. Okay, well, I think that's it for me. There's a longer one. I think I started rambling because I'm actually feeling a little better. Something from. So I didn't eat a lot last night, but something I drank maybe it's just got me feeling like crap today. So I'm gonna head out. Let me know in the comments like what games you guys usually play during Thanksgiving breaks. or what you plan to play during this break. And then, yeah, hope you had a good Black Friday. Hope you have a good Cyber Monday, and yeah, we'll talk later. See y'all later.